In this video, we're going to go over how to pick your settings in manual mode so that you get a properly exposed image. To do this, we usually do it in the following order. First, shutter speed, then aperture, and last but not least, ISO. So at first, we need to consider, is our subject moving or not? In this particular image that we're first taking here, our subject is not moving. So we know that generally it will be frozen at about 1/30th of a second, should be just fine. The next thing we need to consider is what our focal length is if we were hand holding the camera. In this case, we're shooting at 35 millimeters. And so taking that into consideration, we know we'd need to have a shutter speed of at least 1/40th of a second. So since that's faster than 1/30th, we take whichever one was fastest, either the 1/over rule for the focal length or the one for movement. So in this case, we said we need at least 1/40th of a second. So I will dial that in. And I always like to be a little bit safe, just in case there's a little extra movement. So I'll probably take it up to 1/50th. Next, we'll be considering how much depth of field we want. If we don't want a very much depth of field, we will choose to have it be as low a number as possible there. If we want it to be more depth of field, we'll make it a higher f-stop number. With the cameras here, most of the time you'll be able to, in manual mode, change the f-stop by pressing down this. It'll either be labeled AV or plus minus there, and you hold that down and then move the command dial back and forth, the main dial back and forth there. From there, so we can pick what f-stop we want. In this case, we'll start out so that we don't want much depth of field. And then I will take a light meter reading. I can tell you right away that before I even take this shot, it's going to be underexposed. It's going to be very dark because it's blinking at -2. Let's go ahead and take the shot and look at the preview. Sure enough, very dark. So what I need to do now, all that's left for me to change is my ISO. So I need to increase my ISO to make my exposure brighter. And I'll look and see, and some might say, okay, well, it was really dark, let me go really high then. Well, you'll notice by doing that and going really high right away, we're now getting blinking at +2. So I will tell you this will be overexposed now. Sure enough, way too bright. Instead, we'll bring it somewhere around in the middle, and we'll look and see. Okay. At ISO 400, it's a little under, and at 800, it's a little over. So what I probably would suggest doing is taking a shot both at 400 and a shot at 800. And then afterwards, you can go back and pick which seemed closer to what you were aiming for on your computer. Now, let's take an example of if our object were moving. In that case, let's say it was moving fairly fast and I wanted to freeze its motion. I would need to know, okay, about what shutter speed would I need for that? Let's say it was at least 1/200th of a second was necessary to freeze that motion. The first thing I would do is go and change my shutter speed to that 1/200th, right there. And let's say that in this case we actually wanted more depth of field. So I'm going to increase that f-stop, again by pressing that +- button and holding it down, and then moving that main command dial in the front. If we go and we press our button down halfway for shutter, we'll see now we're going to get a very dark exposure. And indeed we do. This time, if I go ahead and I now raise my ISO, we'll see right about dead center, we're at it there with that high ISO. Go ahead and take the shot, and there we go, perfectly exposed. And that is how you use your light meter to get a well-exposed shot in manual mode.